Hello and a very warm welcome. My name's David Roth from WPP, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Follow the Sun, 24 hours of broadcasting right across the world to celebrate the launch of the WPP BAV Best Country Study for 2021, done in conjunction with US News and the Wharton Business School. It's a pleasure to have you join us for this section. Of course, this broadcast is going to be right across the world. We're starting in Australia and New Zealand, and we'll be ending at the end of the 24-hour period in the USA. Well, we've got an absolutely packed broadcast today, and I'd like to start off by introducing Mike Sussman from BAV. Mike has been the brainchild behind the Best Country Studies for many years, and there's nobody better to put the Best Country Study into context. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, David. We're really excited about the launch of the 2021 Best Countries study. It's the most comprehensive study of the power of nation brands. We've been doing this for 6 years, covering countries that represent 95% of the global GDP and about 75% of the world's population. So an amazing coverage. This year, we're looking at 78 countries. We spoke to over 17,000 business decision makers, citizens, and elites around the world. And we've ranked countries on a battery of metrics, including 26 key rankings that we'll talk about throughout this report and throughout the app. One thing we've seen over time is the shifting impact of soft power. It's becoming more and more important to driving the power of a country, while hard power, like banks and tanks, as we call it, the more traditional power, is becoming less impactful on the success of a nation. When we think about the power of a nation, we think about 10 key dimensions, and you can look at each of these ranks and how a country does on these things, from entrepreneurship to cultural influence to quality of life. We've introduced 2 new ones that are becoming more and more important today in these changing dynamics of culture. One of those is how purposeful, how socially purposeful is a nation. And the second is how agile is a nation, how responsive it is to things, particularly during a COVID era. And both of those dimensions are extremely important in driving the GDP and the success of a nation. Agile nations are seen as 3 times more likely to be a better job market. They're rated 3.2 times more likely as being economically influential. They are more connected to the rest of the world. So agile nations are doing something to resonate with people globally. Really important to mention, and it's the biggest driver now of GDP. And that's something that the nations need to be more and more of today. So when you think about agility, the top nations around the world this year are USA, number 1 in terms of being an agile country, followed by Australia, and in 3rd place is Canada. We continue to see the rising power of purpose, not just for brands, but also for nations. In fact, purposeful nations are 57% more likely to be considered for tourism, 55% more likely to be considered as a place to do business. So it's important to be seen as a purposeful and socially responsible country. Number 1 on this purposeful dimension is Canada, followed by Denmark, and in 3rd place is New Zealand out of 78. So pretty impressive, pretty strong dimensions, very important. We also see the power and impact of brands that resonate from countries. In fact, 79.5% of citizens say that consumer brands play an important role in defining a country's culture. So there's a strong relationship between the brands and the nation. We also see that 78.6% of citizens say that the country a product is made in impacts their preference for a brand. So you can see that interplay between brand and country and how important it is today. And we started measuring the power of what does it mean to be made in a specific country. What does made in America mean, and made in China? And we can rank the power of these nations in terms of their exports. So, for instance, Germany ranks number 1 in terms of the country you'd want to buy an automobile from. They also dominate on pharmaceuticals and beer. So you can see a little bit of a balanced power of that nation. Italy is number 1 on fashion. So that's the top brand for when you're thinking about buying fashion brands. France owns cosmetics. In terms of the best countries for real estate, Canada ranks number 1, followed by the United States and then France. So overall, again, you can see how the building blocks of a nation affect its overall ranking. And we're excited to share some more details with you. Back to you, David.
Well, now it's time to get an overview of the key insights from the 2021 study on a global perspective. And who better to do that for us than Professor David Riepstein from Wharton University. Professor Riepstein has been our partner in this study since it started, and his unique understanding and unique perspective of countries, of brands, and what's driving GDP growth is unrivaled. So let's hear from David now.
Hello, I'm Dave Riepstein. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been involved with the Best Country Study since its inception. This year has been a different year. It's been a transformational year. There's been many things that have affected how we view countries and how we live our particular lives. First and foremost, obviously, we've had to deal with the COVID-19 and the tragic loss of millions of lives all around the world. Accompanying this has been the huge impact on economies of various different countries, leading to an overall global recession. Some countries have handled the pandemic well, such as South Korea and Taiwan and several others, whereas other countries have not handled it nearly as well. Accompanying this pandemic has been the subsequent vaccine distribution. And this has required acquisition of vaccines as well as some form of equitable distribution of those. Perhaps Israel has been the country that has done the best at it. There are others that are catching up, but there are other countries that are still struggling today with trying to manage the vaccine distribution. A third major thing that's been happening this year has been the Black Lives movement that originated in the United States and has found it in various other countries all around the world. Climate impact has been a major event that's happened in various different countries. Perhaps the most notable are the brush fires that happened in Australia. We've seen other events, such as the explosions that happened in the Beirut port, killing millions of lives. And of course, we could not ignore Brexit and the impact that's had on the British economy, as well as the economies of Europe. Many, many events have made this year an exceptional year. And it's part of what it is that we've all had to adjust to. Perhaps the greatest impact, of course, has been the pandemic. And what we have witnessed as individuals is we see that how we buy and where we shop, that's changed. How we work, many of us working from home, some of us not having jobs. So there's been a dramatic impact for individuals, where we eat and how we interact with family and friends, dramatically affected, and we've had to adapt. Businesses have had to adapt as well. And what they have had to do is how they connect with their customers has changed. Meetings have changed. The ability to have trade shows dramatically affected. The whole supply chain has been disrupted. And certain industries, such as the hospitality industries or the airline industry, have been dramatically affected, with sporting events being canceled throughout the world. So many, many industries have suffered as a result. And when I've talked to business leaders, almost inevitably, what it is that they tell me is they've needed to be agile. And it sort of is the buzzword that I hear from companies. But that's not restricted to just individuals and companies. Countries have had to adapt as well. And what it is that we have seen is we see, obviously, trying to get the healthcare systems up to speed and handling with this medical crisis that we've got. And getting medical supplies to the hospitals and to individuals has also been an issue. But trying to cope with the unemployment levels and trying to deal with that and supporting the local governments has been a major issue for countries all around the world. And what countries have had to do they've had to adapt as well. Well, we too at the Best Country Study have had to go through our own adaptations. We've added 13 new attributes that we use for evaluating countries, and we have taken one of the previous dimensions, that of citizenship, and we have morphed it into a dimension that we call social purpose. And what is social purpose? It has many of the dimensions that we had in citizenship, but it also includes dimensions such as human rights and racial equality and social justice and climate concern, that have all been attributes that now feed into the social purpose dimension. And we've added a new dimension. And this new dimension, this new overall factor is one of course, agility. And what is it that we have feeding into agility? Our perceptions of countries in terms of their adaptability and in terms of responsiveness and how progressive they are and how modern they happen to be and how dynamic they are, all feed into this agility dimension. So with that said, let's take a look at the latest rankings that we have.
Hello and guten Tag, people around the globe. My name is Maren and I'm head of strategy here at our Hamburg office. And yeah, I'm a strategist for more than 15 years now. And for 15 years, I'm busy with studying German culture, German trends. I'm talking to consumers in focus groups and within interviews across different topics and categories. And yeah, today I want to talk about German stereotypes, and we will find out together whether they are still true or not. I strongly believe that Germany is on the verge of change, and even though we are far from being perfect or that everything is going right here, but today I would like to put an emphasis on the things that are positive. So this is about surprising things that wouldn't have been possible in Germany 10 years ago. And a couple of things even surprised myself by studying facts and things that might have changed Germany to the better. So what we did at the beginning of this event, of following the Sun event, is we talked to other people from the agencies, the so-called poets and thinkers from Germany, and asked them, what is Germany for you within 3 words? And the interesting fact is that there was a dimension. So a lot of people talked about stereotypes, to be honest. So these stereotypes can be put under one big umbrella, and this is calling German people quite conservative or risk-averse or scary a little bit. So they said, we are very accurate by doing things. We want to do things right. We are traditional. We are kind of narrow-minded, unfortunately. Risk-averse, and we like to have it cozy. But on the other side, and that is quite interesting, a lot of people also pointed out that Germany is on the move. So their associations have been more about discourse, activism, creativity, especially in the field of business, a new openness and tolerance, and last but not least, about more diversity. And coming to diversity, I decided to do a little interview with an expert for diversity, and this is with Catherine Gaudry, who is the partner for the DEI resort in our agency. DEI meaning diversity, equation, and integration. And I talked with her because, especially, she's a Canadian living in Germany. So it would be interesting to find out what she thinks about Germany. So listen to the interview, which is coming now and which was recorded in April. Have fun. Hi, Catherine. Happy to have you here for this little 3-minute video. Let's talk about Germany today.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Catherine, you're not only an expert for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and of course a role model for a lot of women here in Germany, but you're also a Canadian living in Germany. So a simple question, what's Germany for you in 3 words?
3 words is very little, but I would have to say risk aversion, movement, and discussions.
What kind of discussions?
Germans really, really like to form project groups and to discuss things for a very long time. That's a very democratic way of making decisions that we like to follow here in Germany.
Well, that sounds kind of true. Up front, we did a little survey here and found out that many people, first of all, associate Germany with a kind of conservative mindset. Mm-hmm. However, younger people also observe more cultural openness and creativity, breaking with traditional patterns nowadays. Regarding your fields of expertise, what do you think has changed to the better in Germany recently?
I think there's definitely a growing awareness for discrimination, diversity, and inclusion in Germany, and that this awareness is driving change in a lot of areas. Mm-hmm. We're really not where we need to be, and I think that's painfully obvious, with things that we read in the media or even experiences that some of us have on the daily. But overall, I think that there's movement, and movement usually drives change. So that's going in the right direction.
Okay, sounds good. You obviously know that Germany has been governed by the first female chancellor
for 16 years now. Do you think that this had an impact on Germany?
I think it absolutely had an impact on Germany, not only because of her gender, but of course because who she is as a person and the life experiences that she's brought with her to the job. I do think that it's of paramount importance that we aim for diversity in all circles where decisions are being made, and so that policies and structures really encompass and reflect the society that we live in. And I'm sure that Angela Merkel not only brought her own female perspective to a classically male office, but she's inspired little girls to believe that, you know, they can do anything, even access the highest position in the country. And that ultimately should be the goal for all children, regardless of their gender, their skin color, their sexual orientation, or if they have a disability or not.
Yeah, I agree. To be honest, would you recommend Germany to a friend?
I would say, of course, just like many things in life, or most things, that really depends what they're looking for, and you know, what their expectations are from where they would like to move to. Just like everywhere else, there's very big differences between different cities and different areas in Germany that you need to take into account if you're moving here. I think overall, there's a great quality of life in Germany, but I also say this from a really privileged perspective. So I'm white, I'm well educated, I speak German, and I'm very aware that that experience can be really different for friends who maybe have to face other challenges in everyday life.
Okay. And last but not least, open question. What kind of product or brand would be super successful in Germany?
I think that an instant simplifier for paperwork would be very useful for Germans and non-Germans alike, and for bureaucratic and less bureaucratic matters in general. That would be something that just kind of takes a 15-page document and summarizes it in the 2 pages it would actually take. Would be really good.
Makes sense to me.
Good. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. You too.
The fact is that Germany has become the 7th happiest country in the world by the World Happiness Report 2020. And we have improved a lot of spots during the last year. So the change is tremendous. So the question is at hand to ask why. Why does this happen? Why have we become so much happier than a couple of years ago? What happened? So I'd like to share with you 7 observations now that we find out that might give a reason why Germans have become a more happy population, a more happy culture. The first one I would like to point out is the female quota. It was implemented in 2015. And even though I'm not quite sure whether this makes everybody happy, it definitely had an impact on the pictures that we see in media. So the landscape was very much influenced by a very homogeneous picture of male politicians. And this has changed to a more diverse landscape. And here I'm sure that this makes a lot of people happier. The second observation is that Germany is on a quite good path towards more green energy. So in 2011, the government decided to abandon atomic energy. And by today, or by 2020, the consumption of electricity is now powered by renewable energies for 46%. And this is a quite good number, which definitely makes a lot of people who are into this, who fight for climate change, fight against climate change, which makes them happier. The third point is a great case where a campaign together with a female company achieved to change the taxes for tampons. And this is a case story where people fought for more fairness because tampons were taxed higher than luxury goods. And I'm quite sure that if people feel and see that they can have an impact and fight for more fairness in a country and that things are changing, then it makes them happy. So watch this out. This is the case film about the tampon book.
I was shocked to learn that pads, tampons, and other menstrual products are taxed as luxury goods.
I suspect it's because men were making the law.
Right, Mr. President, men made the tax laws. 50 years ago, German lawmakers, who were all men, decided to tax feminine hygiene essentials like tampons with the highest rate of 19%, but things like caviar, oil paintings, or truffles with only 7%. So tampons are the real luxury? Menstruation is luxury? Breaking the law wasn't an option for the Female Company, an online shop for feminine hygiene products. So how could we sell tampons for 7% instead of 19%? We outsmarted the law with the law itself by selling tampons packaged as a book, because books are also only taxed with 7%. Hello to the tampon book, a book that is a packaging for tampons to save taxes. A book that is a provocative message of existing gender inequality in our tax system. The book sold out within a day. The second edition within a week. It put the unfair tax system on the agenda of national and international media.
1.650 € Steuern zahlt jede Frau in ihrem Leben nur für Tampons.
We sent the tampon book to all politicians in parliament. Germany's largest drugstore chain decided to sell the tampon book. The petition on change.org got more than 150,000 signatures. A broad alliance of influencers, media and politicians increased the pressure on the government. With success. On the 7th of November 2019, the German Parliament abolished the tampon tax once and for all.
Zukünftig wird für Tampons und andere mit der monatlichen Periode verbundenen Hygieneprodukte endlich statt 19% der verminderte Mehrwertsteuersatz von 7% gelten.
Therefore, the tampon book is the first advertising campaign to cause a change in German law.
The fourth observation is that German unicorns are on the rise. And even though Germany is not very famous for being a super creative startup culture, not as much as America, for example, but however, the investments in startups have risen until 2019 to a new heat. And a couple of interesting unicorns are coming from Germany, and I was surprised about that as well. For example, Trivago, About You, or Flixbus are all unicorns and startups that started in Germany and are now quite successful across Europe. That's an interesting fact, and that might make people proud and happy. Next point, number 5. Germans actually have a real passion for plant-based food. And as a psychologist says that if you are doing good, you're also feeling better. So it turns out that we are not the sausage country anymore. We are the largest plant-based consumption country in Europe, and almost 30% of German consumers try to reduce meat within their daily nutrition and take it very seriously. So we are kind of the leading plant-based nation, and that's an interesting observation of Germany, breaking with stereotypes. Number 6, we are finally reaching the era of new mobility. A lot of people said that Germany, the automotive country, is lacking behind the electromobility, but we put together some interesting facts that are really surprising. For example, Germany is on the way to become the 3rd largest market for electromobility, and we are already the car-sharing market across Europe. And last but not least, a lot of Germans buy more bicycles, and we see a huge bicyclization trend in the bigger cities. And 7, this is the last point, and last but not least, finally Germans have learned to love about themselves. And I think this ability, as we all know, humor is good and humor makes you more happy. This ability is quite valuable for Germany. And this is also breaking with a stereotype, because a lot of people say that Germans are quite serious and don't understand any fun. But let's see. To be honest, the fact is that the most successful podcasts here in Germany, and we are quite a big podcast nation, are comedy podcasts. So they reach day by day or week by week a huge audience of millions of Germans who can laugh about these two podcasts. Secondly, there is a huge trend in digital culture where people Almanfy themselves. So it's the Alman meme trend where you make fun about German stereotypes in the sense of this is typical German, this is funny, and this is of course playing with the typical stereotypes. And last but not least, we even have a party, a satirical party, who managed it to get into the German parliament. That is really interesting because nobody would have thought so. To sum this up, Germans are breaking with stereotypes and are doing things that would not have been possible 10 years ago. And all these 7 observations show that Germany is on the verge of change from doing it right to doing it better. And the final question for today is there a kind of a genius theory behind? Kind of an X factor that explains everything? To be honest, I don't know. But it's an interesting fact that the last 16 years have been very much influenced by these 2 personalities. And they are both connected with 2 major events that happened in Germany. And I'm quite sure that these events had an impact on German culture. And the first event is the German Sommermärchen, which was the German World Championship, not the German ones, but the one who took place in Germany in 2006. And here Germany showed to the world that we are a country of tolerance and warm-heartedness and of a positive atmosphere. And I'm quite sure that this had an impact on the values that Germans transport to the world, but also values that they live for. This event gave Germany a new self-confidence and a very positive one. And the second big event is the refugees' welcome phenomenon that happened in Germany during the crisis. And it definitely showed the world that there was kind of a humanity within this country. And to get this better image outwards might have an impact inwards as well. So we don't know how everything comes together, but it's definitely the case that the values are shifting and that Germans have a new kind of dream and self-confidence to build a better world. At least the younger generations. And it's clear that we are not perfect, that not everything is going right here, and we put this aside for today. And of course, we have a lot of quirks. To bring this to an end here with a fun fact, we are a country who has a strange passion for certain kind of shoes. And maybe this makes us more likable as well. But it's definitely a good time to try it out, to try out Germany, maybe to launch a green service, a car sharing idea, or a plant-based food brand, whatever you can think of, whatever you can imagine. It's a good time to Almanfy yourself and to find out what Germans are truly about and what kind of stereotypes are still true and which are not. So thank you for your attention within this event of Germany following the sun. And actually, this is also a picture of Germany and not Canada. Psst. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you all very much indeed. To celebrate this very special launch, we've created a very special app. It's a virtual reality experience where you can literally visit every single country that's featured in the 2021 study. Well, you can get it on your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone. All you need to do is just download it from the URL that's on the screen here. Enjoy, explore. It's full of interest and insights, and we'll be refreshing the content frequently over the course of the next few months. So please do go back frequently. Earlier, I talked about the significance of countries being seen as brands. This is being increasingly realised right across the world, not just by business leaders, but by governments at the most senior of levels. I caught up with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and asked him how important he believes country brands are. Mr. Prime Minister, what contribution do you think that retailing makes to the economy and society in general?
So many. I mean, it is the biggest employer in the Netherlands. 900,000 people are somehow connected to the retail sector, so it is huge in its economic impact. That means that many people, in many cases young people, start their working life experiences in the retail sector. It is also a place where you can learn how to be more entrepreneurial and how to start your own business. It is a sector in our economy which is very much focused on innovation and disruptive innovation. It is very much connected to the modern economy, to the internet, to online shopping. So there are so many positives. And it's also a place where people come together. It's also a sort of community place. In some of the stores, people drink a cup of coffee, meet friends, and then buy some stuff. So it has many, many impacts on society.
Mr. Prime Minister, you had a fantastic career at Unilever. You obviously know brands very well. Do you think country brands are as important as product brands?
Oh, they're crucial. And what I found in this job is that the brand of Amsterdam, the brand of the Netherlands, the brand of Eindhoven, or the whole commercial area around cities like Zwolle and Amersfoort are crucial for our international standing. And the fact that you can bike to school as a child, that it's relatively safe here, that there are so many possibilities when you like sports or culture. And I really learned to brand that much more than we did already.
One last question, Mr. Prime Minister. What advice would you give retailers today who are under a lot of pressure, under a lot of stress? Everything's changing very fast.
Yeah, but still, at the same time, you are in a fascinating sector. So enjoy what you are doing. We live only once. This is the real thing. This is not the. So you have to make the best of it. And there are so many opportunities for good salespeople, for good businessmen and women, to make use of all those opportunities which are out there, and do realize that you play a very important part in societies. You are really part of society.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, I can't believe it. We've come to the end of our broadcast. We're almost out of time. I'd like to thank everybody who participated in today's broadcast. And just to remind you again, please do download the app and enjoy going virtually into every single one of our countries in this year's 2021 Best Countries Study. So from me, David Roth, thank you very much indeed. And Mike, thank you very much indeed as well.
My pleasure. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Well, have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it.